Greetings, knowledge explorers. The debate about whether humans actually set foot on the moon in 1969 is still alive. Many people doubt that this historic milestone ever happened, while others are convinced of its truth. In this article, we will explore this fascinating topic from different angles, presenting arguments and evidence so that everyone can draw their own conclusions. First, it's important to remember that lunar exploration didn't start with NASA's Apollo program. The Soviets were the first to aim for our satellite in the late 1950s with the Lunar program, which included 24 missions aimed at gathering information using probes and artificial satellites. On September 14, 1959, 10 years before humans reached the moon, they managed to crash the spherical probe Luna 2 onto its surface. Less than a month later, on October 10, 1959, the Luna 3 probe managed to photograph the far side of the moon for the first time. This phenomenon occurs because the moon orbits the Earth and rotates on its axis, always showing the same face to our planet. After several failed attempts, on February 3, 1966, the Luna 9 probe successfully landed on the lunar surface and sent back photos and data for 3 days. This was the first image captured by humans on the surface of our satellite. In 1961, the Soviets had already sent the first human into space, Yuri Gagarin, followed by other cosmonauts and American astronauts. The space race between these superpowers during the Cold War was the main driver of exploration beyond our planet. In response to Soviet advances, the Americans put all their efforts into being the first to place a human on the moon. They invested $25.4 billion at the time in the Apollo program, which would be about $170 billion today. In summary, the technology and resources were available, and landing on the moon was just a matter of time. Finally, it was achieved on July 21, 1969, with the Apollo 11 mission, when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the lunar surface. However, many people ask, if we really landed on the moon, why haven't we returned? The answer is clear. Of course we did. A total of 12 astronauts walked on the moon between 1969 and 1972 during the Apollo 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17 missions. After 6 successful lunar landings, the United States decided to cancel Apollo missions 18, 19, and 20 due to budget constraints and a less favorable social climate. Additionally, after the initial excitement, the subsequent landings seemed to yield only more rocks, with no significant new discoveries. One argument that undermines many conspiracy theories is the behavior of the Soviets. If it had been a fraud, they would have been the first to denounce it, given the great rivalry between the two superpowers. However, they never protested or accused the Americans of deceiving humanity. Why? Because they knew it had really happened, as it was feasible, and they were close to achieving it themselves. In fact, their greatest success came the year after the Apollo 11 mission, in December 1970, when they managed to leave a remotely controlled vehicle, the Lunokhod 1, on the lunar surface. It traveled over 10 kilometers and remained operational for 322 days, sending thousands of images and analyzing the soil and subsurface. One of the robot operators on Earth stated in 2015 that through Lunokhod 1, he witnessed the footprints left by Apollo 11 and its astronauts. Among the arguments made by moon landing skeptics are questions like, why is the American flag waving if there's no atmosphere on the moon? Why can't we see stars in the sky in the photos? Or claims like, the radiation in the Van Allen belts would have killed the astronauts. The answer to the first question is that, although the moon has a very thin atmosphere, the flag had a rod at the top to hold it outstretched. The wrinkles and its appearance of waving are because it was folded up in the lunar module. Regarding the absence of stars in the photographs, it's due to the short exposure time needed to prevent the images from being overexposed by the intense sunlight reflecting off the lunar surface. Thus, the faint light of the stars didn't get captured. As for the radiation in the Van Allen belts, NASA was aware of this danger, and the Apollo missions were designed to pass through them quickly, so the extra radiation the astronauts received was minimal and posed no health risk. Another recurring question is the alleged hiring of filmmaker Stanley Kubrick to fake the moon landing. This is categorically an urban legend that started in 1995 in discussion forums and news groups. Later in 2002, a fake French documentary gave more credence to this theory, but many who believed it accepted it without realizing it was a hoax. Some also wonder if the moon landing broadcast was delayed in case the mission ended in tragedy. No, over 500 million people around the world watched that historic moment live. The The delay in radio transmissions between the Moon and Earth was only a second and a half. Another myth is about supposed conversations between Apollo 11 astronauts talking about extraterrestrial beings. This comes from a fake transcript published in 1969 in an entertainment magazine with no journalistic rigor. No amateur radio operators who were listening to the transmissions confirmed those conversations. And Buzz Aldrin himself called it the silliest thing I've ever heard. Aside from the images and audio, skeptics also ask, why does it seem so difficult to return to the Moon now if over 50 years ago, with inferior technology, they managed it several times? The main reasons delaying the return to our satellite today are not technological, but economic, political, and scientific priorities. Every space project is very costly, and agencies don't have the same level of investment and government support as during the space race era. Moreover, when it comes to exploration, it's much more cost-effective to invest in sending robots, as we're doing with Mars, than to organize manned missions. Robots can take samples, images, and conduct various measurements, and they eliminate the need to meet the demanding biological requirements of a human being. In any case, the most ambitious space project currently being developed is the Artemis program, aimed at returning to the Moon. But not just for a brief visit and return, but to take the first woman and the next man, establish a sustainable presence on the lunar surface and orbit, and lay the groundwork for a lunar economy. In November 2024, at least that's the plan, the Artemis II mission will launch to the Moon, the first crewed mission of this program. 3 men and 1 woman will travel in the Orion spacecraft, although they won't land on the Moon but will prepare the way for a future mission whose crew will be the first to walk on our natural satellite since 1972. This program is expected to help develop the technology needed to send humans to Mars, sometime in the 2040s. Now, let's look at some arguments that confirm humans have landed on the Moon. The first is the retroreflectors installed by the astronauts of the Apollo 11, 14, and 15 missions. From Earth, we can send a laser beam to them, which, when reflected back, allows us to accurately measure the distance between the Moon and Earth at any given time. A second argument is the lunar rocks collected, whose radiometric dating shows they are much older than Earth rocks, confirming they are not just stones from our planet posing as lunar ones. This is because the Moon lacks geological activity, unlike Earth, making it rare to find rocks older than 3.6 billion years on Earth's surface, while the Moon has plenty between 4,000 and 400 million years old. A third argument is the evidence provided by new lunar exploration missions. For example, since 2009, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter has been sending images showing the footprints of astronauts and traces of various Apollo missions. Lastly, those who think it was all a conspiracy by the US government to deceive the world should ask themselves a common-sense question. If over 400,000 people of different nationalities, political tendencies, and religious beliefs were involved in the Apollo program, how could they have kept such a conspiracy secret for so long? How do you convince all those people to participate in the deception and never reveal the truth? And for what purpose would they have done such a thing? The deafening silence of the Soviets about their rivals' achievement is, in itself, a compelling piece of evidence against conspiracy theories. What do you think about humans landing on the Moon? Have I clarified any of your doubts? Or do you have new questions? Let me know in the comments.